My name's George Buchanan, and I'm a member of the family that's very lucky and privileged to call Hodsock home. So a warm welcome to you all. Do come and join me, and if you fancy a warm-up by the campfire, feel free. Otherwise, plenty of benches around. And my history talk lasts about 10 minutes, so do sit and join me and learn a little bit more about the family and about this wonderful place called Hodsock. Now, the name Hodsock is ancient. It dates back many centuries, possibly even thousands of years. The first record of Hodsock that we have is 1086 in the Domesday Book. Sack, as it was listed, was a farm and under the jurisdiction of a man called Wolsey, which is quite an Anglo-Saxon name. And we think that the nature of the name Hodsock comes from Hod's oak. So Sack, Hod's oak, Hodsock, over the centuries has merged, and there have always been oak trees here. So we've got a strong reason to believe that oak trees is the nature of our name here at Hodsock. If you have a look over here, this is our oldest oak tree on the estate. It's a twin-trunked oak tree, and in the region of 450 to 500 years old. So it's at the peak of its life. An oak tree takes around 300 years to establish itself, and another 300 years to live, and then about another 300 to gently die off. So this is in its prime of life. And what I like about it is that it's been here as long as our Tudor gatehouse. You've probably seen our lovely arched building with twin towers, red brick. That was built in around 1500. It was certainly built by 1540 because Henry VIII came here for lunch and had lunch in that building with Catherine Howard, wife number 5, second to lose her head, and they were on a trip up to York, and then on their way back they stopped at Hodsock here, had lunch, and then had 6 days hunting in Hatfield Forest, which is now really the edge of Doncaster. And the reason they came here is that the Cliftons lived here at Hodsock. They were the lords of Hodsock, as they were known at the time, and they were the gamekeepers to Henry VIII in this area, looking after Sherwood Forest and Hatfield Forest, and this is a central location between the two, and they would have managed the woodland, a lot of which would have been oak trees here. So this is an ancient wood. It's known as horse pasture. And on our oldest maps, this is already quite an established wood. So there's a mixture now of oak trees, there's ash trees here, there's larch, there's Douglas fir, there are beech trees, which we pollard, keep into a sort of lollipop shape, so they keep their leaves for a little bit longer to give you a bit of contrast with the green and the white of the snowdrops. And we've got some unusual specimens dotted around as well for fun, and some of the best conker trees in the world. I've been lucky to grow up here, man and boy, and I have 4 small children. My wife and I, Kat and I, live in the Priory. It's half term this week, so one of them's off on a hockey camp today. That's Elsa, she's our eldest, she's 9. We have 2 boys, Laurie and Guy, who are 7 and 6, and we have Tess, who is 4. So 4 small children. We had 4 under 5 at one stage, and nothing better than having the thrills and spills and laughter of a family running around a place like this. And it's important to know that it's a living, breathing family home. We're not a museum, we're not a National Trust property where the family's long gone. This is us here, and we've been here for exactly 249 years and 11 months. So I think you can see what's coming next. On the 25th of March this year, Lady Day, we celebrate our 250th anniversary here as a family. 9 generations so far, 10th generation growing up. Let's hope we can last another 9 or 10 generations after today. So what is Hodsock today? An 800-acre privately owned estate, and we're right in the heart of it here. There's a mixture of farmland, which is mainly arable, and some grazing, so we grow wheat and barley, potatoes, sugar beet, all the sort of cash crops you find on the supermarket shelves these days, and so we're an important part of the food chain. And we also manage about 100 acres of woodland within the estate, and this is probably our prettiest wood, and one that enjoys the most amount of visits from visitors during the snowdrop season, and then again in the bluebell season. You've probably seen, if you've walked up to the end of the wood, that there are green shoots appearing of the bluebells, which will be out in May, which are just amazing. Bluebells tend to come out just as thunderstorms hit, so we will be opening the grounds again for a few days in May, but do bring your brolly and your waterproofs and your sou'westers and your wellies, because they tend to be out at their best when the thunderstorms arrive. And we run the Priory as a private family home and a wedding venue. You may have spotted that we've got a wedding party here this afternoon, so we may well see the bride and groom, Kiri and Chris, strolling around in the snowdrops for their wedding photographs later today. I mentioned Lady Day. It's very appropriate that Lady Day was the day that we bought the estate in the 1760s, because there's been a long line of ladies who've kept Hodsock going. It was my wife's idea a dozen years ago to say, Hodsock would make a great wedding venue, perhaps we should investigate doing that. And sure enough, we've hosted nearly 500 wedding receptions in the last 6 or 7 years, and it's been a great privilege to be at the heart of a landmark occasion for a family. You've got to get a wedding absolutely right. There's no second attempts, you couldn't come back tomorrow and try again, could you? You've got to get it right. And we like dealing with families and all the emotions and tremors that go with the fun of having a wedding organised under our roof. And my parents are still very much alive, active and involved in the running of the estate and the gardens. It was my mother's vision to open the gates and allow visitors to come and enjoy this wonderful, magical, peaceful place with the bird song and these wonderful snowdrops we have in abundance, and the amazing spring flowers that you may well have seen if you've been around the gardens already, with the witch hazel and the cyclamen and the aconites. The chimonatus is looking fantastic today. The smell of the sarcococca you may have got floating in the air to surprise you today, and some early daffodils as well. It's lovely, lovely to see those. And we started opening the doors in 1991, so 24 years later. I'm sure if you're regular visitors, you'll have seen some gradual changes, but the theory is always to try and keep the magic and keep the charm and wonder of this place. Being a family business and not run by a membership as such, we do rely on a lot of helpers. We have many volunteers who help us, and I'm sure you've met quite a few of them today. We are a bit more amateurish than the National Trust, but I think that comes with part of the charm of us opening our grounds. It's us as a family. We're not a robust organisation. I hope you're enjoying the experience for that. And my parents have been here for the best part of 50 years and keeping the place going. And my father was Lord Lieutenant of Nottinghamshire, the Queen's representative for 22 years of those 50. So you may well have come across him on official duties, pinning medals on people and opening things up and attending many church services and supporting all the local charities in Nottinghamshire and championing this wonderful county. So we've always been very much part of the community, and this long line of ladies, from my wife to my mother. It was my great aunt in my grandparents' generation who ran Hodsock with the Women's Land Army. During the Second World War, most country houses were either knocked down or commandeered by the regular army or the Women's Land Army. We were fortunate to have the land girls here because they took care of the place. They had to rip up the gardens and turn them into potato patches and long rows of swedes and turnips, things which made chunky veg stews and pies and soups that were pretty watery and pretty tasteless, but it kept a lot of people fed during a very lean time. And they used the gatehouse as a mess room for letting off steam. On Saturday nights they'd screen movies and have cups of warm cocoa up there as a bit of a release after a long week's work. It was 7 days a week, and they lived in the house with my great aunt and great uncle. And in the 19th century, that's when we got our name. I've mentioned Hodsock and the origin of that name, Hod's Oak. But the priory, if you were expecting to find monks here today, you will be sadly disappointed. We don't have any monks to show off because we've never actually been an actual priory. It was the second generation of our family, a lovely lady called Anne, who took over the running of Hodsock in the early 1800s. She will have found the gatehouse here and a collection of rather modest farm buildings. The gatehouse probably bankrupted the Clifton family. It was beautifully built, and when they had the visit with Henry VIII and Catherine Howard, there would have been an entourage of about 3,000 men in the park that went with them as well, all of whom will have needed feeding and watering and entertaining. And we think after that day, the Cliftons' fortunes dwindled dramatically, and they were bankrupted by that visit because nothing else was built on the same scale. Everything was a bit more modest. Yes, I think we'll have a single-story barn there rather than a two-story brick building. And the second generation of our family cleared all those buildings away, landscaped the gardens around the moated shape that they had been left with. It had been a very defensive site, very much, anyone who's in these walls is allowed in, but anyone we don't want is very much not welcome. That was all softened, and the landscaping of the gardens was in context of the estate. I just want to see a single tree over there. I want to see a collection of sheep over there. The odd cow there would be very pleasant, but I don't want to see any machinery. I don't want to see people working. I want to see nature at work. So the positioning of the house and where the windows are and how the garden's been planted up has had a lot of thought put into it 200 years ago, and it's that legacy in many ways that we're preserving today. Anne, sadly, couldn't pass the estate on to her own children because they died before her, and so it passed to a cousin who had very fortunately married a Cunard. Now, the Cunard shipping line might be familiar to you. Samuel Cunard was a Canadian who started a luxury cruise company that's still going today, and his daughter married one of the family who lived here at Hodsock and preserved Hodsock's future into the Victorian era. The house was extended, an extra wing was added for the staff, and modern things like flushing toilets and kitchens were put in to the house. It was a very exciting time for us, and again, just reinforces it's all about the girls here at Hodsock. So my two daughters have just an equal chance as our two sons of taking over the management. It's whoever is going to be best suited to it that will, I'm sure, will be enjoying themselves here in 25, 30 years' time. Who knows, maybe before. And I'll just mention that we were, at one point, if you can believe it, a 20,000 acre estate, and now we're an 800 acre estate. It took one member of the family to very, very nearly gamble the whole lot away. And it's important, I think, in a family history to have a little cad in the cupboard there. Now, when Anne, who I mentioned, whose legacy it is that we preserve today, she gave us the name Hodsock Priory when she built the house, and she planted the snowdrops and laid out the gardens as they are. Now, that's an amazing thing to leave behind after you've gone. 200 years later, we're still preserving what she's designed for us. Her wayward brother, a man called Henry, managed to inherit the much bigger stately home that belonged to the family 2 miles away from here, and the 20,000 acre Greater Hodsock estate. By the time he was 25, he'd gambled all of that away except what his sister had here at Hodsock. So of the 1,000 acres that were left, 800 remain in the family's ownership today. So we've done well for 200 years to keep it going in the same way. Now, Henry was a friend of the Prince Regent, and if you're a wealthy young man, as he was, you could have a lot of fun if you owned racehorses, which he did, and you enjoyed gambling, which he certainly did, and if you enjoyed drinking and partying, which he definitely did. And that was rather a toxic combination, and he whittled away his entire fortune within the space of about 3 years, inheriting when he was 21, 22, completely bankrupt and penniless by the time he was 25. The big house at Blythe no longer stands, unfortunately, and that's partly because it was sold on and sold on and sold on. There wasn't one family keeping it going through hook and by crook, and I think I have a big belief that if you keep the same family involved, there'll be someone who's crazy enough to take it on, who irrationally falls in love with it and goes, I want to do that. I want to do that more than anything else in the whole world. I know it's tough. I know it's not straightforward. It's not the lap of luxury, and it's not all white wine lunches all the day. It's very much nose to the grindstone, roll your sleeves up and get on with it type job, and it's a lifestyle, not a job, 7 days a week, and it's great fun. We get a lot of pleasure out of it. So dear old Henry managed to gamble all of that away. He was ceremoniously kicked out of the family. So again, it's a good lesson to the boys in our family, and whenever we have a bit of tension in our family discussions, of which there are many, and the bigger the decision, the more informal the meeting tends to be with family business. It's usually around the kitchen table with a coffee when you're dealing with the big issues. It's around the board table when you're dealing with the more trivial things. And often we think, well, if we can't resolve this issue, what would Henry do? What would Anne do? We'll all do what Anne would do, and we unanimously agree that that's always the best way, because 200 years on, her legacy lives. Now, Henry was kicked out of the family, became a soldier, and actually redeemed himself by rising up the ranks to being a lieutenant colonel. He was fighting in the Peninsular Wars as a young man. He was in his early 30s at this stage, and gets captured behind enemy lines, which is mentioned by the Duke of Wellington, whose dispatches are written up from that time. It says, Mellish captured. I'm a descendant from the Mellish family. One of the Mellish girls married a Buchanan, and hence the name changed, but it's the same bloodline. Mellish captured behind enemy lines. They won't keep him long. They won't put up with his gambling habits. So he's obviously not lost his touch, and sure enough, the following day, the French captors strap him to a donkey and send him back to the British lines for being a bad influence on the other prisoners of war and the French soldiers. Once he's been unstrapped by his brother officers and fellow soldiers, One of them pipes up and says, "Mellish, your horse isn't even worth a fiver," making reference to the days when at Blythe, just up the road, he had 40 racehorses in training that he would gallop between Hodsock and Blythe every day, keep them fit. And he managed to win the St Leger, which is still run today in Doncaster, in 1804 and 1805. He'd lost it all by 1806. So he had high points and many low points. And he immediately quips back, "Your horse isn't even worth a fiver. I bet you I can turn that into 45 quid. No one knows quite what he means, but nonetheless, he takes a bet off every single soldier assembled, puts his wager book into his pocket, straps himself up, and jumps onto his true horse and charges straight back at the French lines. Now, the French captors have had enough of this chap, and they start blazing everything they can at him. Cannons, rifles, they send the cavalry out after him. One single man on a horse charging at full pelt towards the French lines. One of the French sharpshooters brings the horse down stone dead. Mellish is unharmed, brushes himself down, personally shakes the hand of the Frenchman who brought his horse down, and cool as you like, hands in pockets, strolls back to the British lines to tap his commanding officer on the shoulder and say, "Now sir, last time I was in London, I failed to pass on some rather important information. It's a new thing that's come out that should an officer's horse be killed in action, that officer will be compensated to the tune of £45. So he won the bet, but risked his life against all odds in order to do so. He died here aged 35. He was fairly unwell, we think through self-indulgence. He had no children of his own, so the entire estate passed on to his sister Anne. Sadly, as I mentioned earlier, she outlived both her sons, neither of whom had married, neither of whom had children. So the estate passed on to the cousin who married a Cunard, whose sister also married into the Buchanan family. So we've been aligned for a good 150 years or so. So we're the Buchanans today. We're keeping the Mellish flame alive. My middle name is Mellish, but we're still one family, and we're deeply rooted here at Hodsock. And like I say, I'm the 9th generation of the same family to be here today. So there's many parts of my ancestors speaking to you too, and I hope you'll continue to visit us in future years. We are really only open during the month of February, famously, for our snowdrops. If you do happen to be around in May and fancy coming to see our bluebells, they are amazing, but it's not the big event that we are probably most famous for, our snowdrops. So thank you very much indeed for your time. I shall linger by the fire here if anyone has any questions. Do have a good rest of your afternoon and have a safe journey home. Thank you.